The clay pot shattered against the marble floor, silencing every voice in the room. Khalil's hand froze mid-signature, the ink-dipped pen trembling an inch above the contract that would sign away everything he owned. His wife Amira stood in the doorway, chest heaving, her eyes blazing with an intensity he'd never seen before. For 3 years of marriage, she hadn't spoken a single word. Until now. "Step away from that document," she said, her voice cutting through the shocked silence like a blade. "Or you will lose everything you've ever worked for." But we are getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how we arrived at this moment, we need to go back 6 months, to a sun-drenched cafe in the heart of Tunis, where Khalil sat with his childhood friend Hossein, sipping mint tea and nursing a growing frustration with the women in his life. "I'm telling you, Hossein, I cannot take another day of it," Khalil said, setting down his glass with more force than necessary. "My mother lectures me about every business decision. My sisters question my judgment on everything from the spices I trade to the clothes I wear. When I marry, I want peace. I want a home where I can think, where silence greets me instead of endless opinions." Hossein laughed, nearly choking on his tea. "Brother, you're looking for a wife in North Africa and you want silence. You might as well search for snow in the Sahara." "I'm serious," Khalil insisted, leaning forward. "A man's home should be his sanctuary. Is it too much to ask for a woman who knows the value of holding her tongue?" An elderly woman at the next table turned to look at him. Her name was Fatima, known throughout Tunis as the matchmaker who never failed to find the perfect spouse, though sometimes perfect came with unexpected meanings. Her wrinkled face crinkled into a knowing smile. "Young man," she said, rising from her seat and approaching their table uninvited, "I couldn't help but overhear. You seek a quiet wife." Khalil straightened, suddenly hopeful. "You know someone?" Fatima's eyes gleamed with something that might have been mischief, or perhaps warning. "I know exactly the woman. But she comes with a story, and you must hear it before you decide." "Tell me," Khalil urged, gesturing for her to sit. "Her name is Amira. 28 years old, from the respected Al-Mansour family. Beautiful, educated, graceful in every way. And she has not spoken a single word in 3 years." Hossein leaned in, intrigued despite himself. "Why? What happened to her?" Fatima shrugged mysteriously. "Some say heartbreak. Some say trauma. Some say she simply decided the world wasn't worth speaking to. But I've seen her, young Khalil. She communicates perfectly well through gestures and written words. She runs her father's household without a single complaint. Never argues, never nags, never questions." Khalil felt his heart quicken. "She sounds perfect. Arrange a meeting." "Are you certain?" Fatima asked, her gaze sharpening. "Sometimes silence hides more than peace. Sometimes it conceals power." But Khalil was already standing, already imagining his serene future. "When can I meet her?" 3 days later, Khalil found himself in the Al-Mansour family courtyard, his palms sweating despite the cool evening breeze. Amira's father, Omar, greeted him with a firm handshake but troubled eyes. "Fatima tells me you're interested in my daughter," Omar said carefully. "I must be honest with you, Khalil. Amira was not always silent. 3 years ago, she was engaged to a young scholar. He died of fever 2 weeks before their wedding. Since that day, she hasn't spoken. We've tried everything, doctors, healers, prayers. Nothing. She simply chooses silence." "Does she write? Can she communicate?" Khalil asked. "Oh yes," Omar assured him. "She's quite capable. She manages the household accounts, corresponds with relatives, even helps her younger sister with studies. She just doesn't speak." "Then I still wish to meet her." Omar studied him for a long moment. "Very well. But Khalil, ask yourself why you want this. A woman's silence isn't always a blessing. Sometimes it's a strategy." Before Khalil could ask what he meant, a figure appeared in the doorway. Amira moved like water, smooth and unhurried. She wore a deep blue kaftan that caught the lamplight, her dark hair partially covered by a cream-colored hijab. But it was her eyes that struck Khalil, motionless, large, luminous, and absolutely penetrating. Those eyes seemed to look straight through him, reading thoughts he hadn't yet formed. She approached, bowed slightly, then gestured toward the seating area. No words, but the invitation was clear. As she prepared tea, Khalil watched her every movement. She didn't just pour tea, she performed it like a ritual, each gesture deliberate and graceful. When she handed him the cup, their fingers brushed, and for a moment, her eyes locked with his. In that gaze, he saw intelligence, calculation, and something else he couldn't quite name. It should have made him cautious. Instead, it fascinated him. She sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap, and simply waited. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was expectant, as if she were giving him space to reveal himself. "I'm told you haven't spoken in 3 years, Khalil began. I won't insult you by asking why. I'm simply here to say that I'm looking for a wife, and I believe we might be well suited." One elegant eyebrow rose slightly. She pulled a small notepad from her pocket and wrote something, then turned it to face him. "Why would we be well suited?" "I value peace," Khalil said honestly. "I've spent my life surrounded by loud opinions. I built my business from nothing, and every step of the way, someone had something to say about it. I want a home that's a refuge. I want a partner who trusts me to make decisions without endless debate." She wrote again, "You want someone who won't challenge you." The directness startled him. "I want someone who respects my judgment." Her pen moved swiftly, "And if your judgment is wrong?" Khalil felt a flicker of irritation, but also intrigue. Even in silence, she was pushing back. "Then I'll face the consequences. But I'd prefer to fail by my own choices than succeed by committee." Something shifted in her expression, the softness, or perhaps satisfaction. She wrote one more line, "When would this marriage take place?" And just like that, without a word spoken, they were engaged. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens when Amira finally speaks, and trust me, it's not what anyone expects. The wedding was lavish, as befitted Khalil's success as a spice merchant. The courtyard blazed with lanterns, musicians played traditional Tunisian melodies, and guests danced late into the night. Through it all, Amira remained serene and silent, acknowledging well-wishers with graceful nods, her eyes observing everything. Khalil's mother Zara pulled him aside as the celebration reached its peak. "Son, this isn't right. Marriage should be about partnership, about conversation. How can you build a life with someone who won't speak to you?" "Mother, you speak enough for 10 people, Khalil said, trying to keep his tone light. "Perhaps I need someone who listens." "Be careful what you wish for," Zara warned, her voice dropping. "Your father, may Allah rest his soul, taught you that respect and silence aren't the same thing. Don't confuse the two." But Khalil was already turning away, eager to get back to his bride. As he approached Amira, he noticed her younger sister Layla whispering something in her ear. Amira nodded once, and Layla squeezed her hand before walking away. For just a moment, Amira's expression flickered with something that looked like determination, or perhaps warning. The first months of marriage were everything Khalil had hoped for. He would come home to a perfectly managed household, delicious meals, and a wife who never complained about his long hours or questioned his business decisions. Amira communicated through notes, gestures, and expressions. She was attentive without being clingy, present without being demanding. "Paradise," he told Hossein one evening at their usual cafe. "Absolute paradise. No arguments about money, no nagging about time spent at the warehouse, no opinions about who I should or shouldn't do business with." Hossein looked skeptical. "And you're happy with this?" "Really happy. Blissfully. Brother, I hope you're right. But I've noticed something. Your wife, she watches everything. When I come to your home for tea, I feel her eyes following every word we say. It's like she's studying us." Khalil waved this off. "She's attentive. That's a good quality in a wife." What Khalil didn't see were the moments when he wasn't looking. Amira moving through his study while tidying, her eyes scanning the papers on his desk. Amira lingering in doorways during his business meetings, memorizing every word. Amira at night, when Khalil was asleep, reviewing his ledgers and correspondence by lamplight, her pen occasionally moving across her own hidden notebook. She was watching. She was learning. She was preparing. The shift began when Yusuf started visiting more frequently. Yusuf had been Khalil's business partner for 5 years, handling the shipping and logistics while Khalil managed the buying and selling. He was charming, always ready with a joke, and married to Nadia, the woman whose voice could carry across 3 houses. "Brother Khalil?" Yusuf boomed one afternoon, bursting into the house without knocking. "I have the most incredible news. But first, let me say hello to your lovely wife. Amira. Where are you hiding?" Amira appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a cloth. She nodded a greeting and gestured toward the majlis. "Still not talking, eh?" Yusuf said, his tone inappropriately familiar. "What a treasure you have, Khalil. My Nadia never stops. Sometimes I dream of a silent house." As Amira served them tea and pastries, Yusuf launched into his proposal. "Listen, brother, I've been contacted by a merchant consortium in Constantine. They want to establish a new trade route through Algeria to Morocco. Spices, textiles, ceramics, everything we handle, but on a scale 3 times our current volume." Khalil leaned forward, interested. "What's the investment?" "That's the beautiful part, they need a local partner to front the initial costs. Establish warehouses, hire guards, secure the permits. They estimate 6 months to full operation, then profits of 40% over our current income." "How much capital?" Yusuf pulled out a folded document. "Everything. Your shops, your current inventory, your savings. But Khalil, in 6 months, will triple it all." "Triple?" As they talked, Amira moved around the room, refilling tea, clearing plates. But her movements had changed. She was lingering near the table where the documents lay. When Yusuf gestured broadly, knocking one paper to the floor, Amira picked it up. Her eyes scanned the Arabic text rapidly before she placed it back on the table. Khalil, absorbed in Yusuf's enthusiasm, didn't notice. But Yusuf did. For just a moment, his eyes narrowed as he watched her. Then his smile returned, broader than before. "So what do you say, brother? Are we going to make history together?" "I need to think about it," Khalil said. "Review the contracts, understand the timeline." Of course. Take the documents. Study them. But don't take too long, this opportunity won't wait forever." After Yusuf left, Khalil spread the papers across his desk, excitement buzzing in his chest. This could be the opportunity that transformed his comfortable success into real wealth. He could expand beyond Tunis, maybe eventually to Cairo or Damascus. He didn't notice Amira standing in the doorway, her face troubled. That night, Khalil found a note on his pillow, "Be careful." He smiled, touched by her concern but ultimately dismissive. What did she know about trade routes and business ventures? Over the next 2 weeks, Yusuf became a constant presence. He brought more documents, more projections, more promises. The deal grew sweeter with each visit. Khalil found himself caught up in the vision, already imagining his expanded empire. Amira's interventions became more frequent. She would place certain papers on top of others, pointing to specific clauses. She left notes in his ledgers, check credentials. Verify contacts. Too much risk. Khalil grew irritated. One evening, after finding another note tucked into the contract, he confronted her. "Amira, I appreciate your concern, but you don't understand these matters. Yusuf and I have been partners for years. He's like a brother to me. I need you to trust my judgment on this." She stared at him for a long moment, then picked up her notebook. She wrote furiously, her hand moving with barely controlled emotion. When she turned it to him, the words hit like accusations, "Brothers can betray. Trust, but verify. Please." "I don't need to verify what I already know," Khalil said firmly. "This is men's business, Amira. I married you for peace, not for more opinions questioning my decisions." He saw the heart flash across her face, saw her hand tighten around the pen. For a moment, he thought she might speak, might break her 3 years of silence right then. Instead, she turned and walked away, her spine rigid with contained emotion. Khalil told himself he was right. He was the man, the merchant, the one with experience. What could a silent woman possibly know about business? In her room, Amira sat at her small desk, surrounded by papers she'd been secretly copying. She'd spent weeks investigating Yusef's claims, sending letters to merchants she knew in Constantine and Algeria through her sister Leila. The responses had chilled her blood. There was no consortium. There was no opportunity. There was only Yusef, drowning in gambling debts, desperate enough to destroy his partner to save himself. She had tried to warn Khalil subtly. Now she would have to do something more drastic. The signing ceremony was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Yusef insisted on doing it properly, with a Qadi to witness, with other merchants present, with all the formality that would make the contract binding and irreversible. Khalil dressed in his finest julaba, excitement and nervousness warring in his stomach. The guests arrived promptly. Hossein came, along with 3 other merchants Khalil respected. The Qadi, a stern old man named Mustafa, brought his official seal. Yusef arrived with Nadia, both dressed extravagantly, too extravagantly, Hossein thought, for people supposedly investing their own fortune alongside Khalil's. Let's begin, Yusef said, rubbing his hands together. A historic day, brothers. A historic day. The contract was laid out on the table. Khalil reviewed it one final time, though by now he'd memorized every clause. Or so he thought. The script was dense, the legal language complex. Yusef had assured him it was standard. Khalil picked up the pen. Dipped it in ink. And that's when Amira entered, carrying a tray of tea. No one paid her much attention at first. She was the silent wife, expected to serve and disappear. But as she approached the table, her hands began to tremble. The glasses rattled on the tray. Careful, sister. Nadia called out. Those are expensive glasses. Amira's trembling increased. The glasses clinked together dangerously. Everyone was watching now, concerned. And then she let go. The tray crashed to the marble floor with a sound like breaking thunder. Glass shattered in all directions. Tea spread across the white tiles like blood. The room fell into shocked silence. Khalil jumped to his feet. Amira. What's gotten into you? She stood there, chest heaving, hands clenched into fists. Her eyes locked onto his, and in them he saw fire, determination, and fury. When she opened her mouth, every person in the room leaned forward instinctively. Don't sign that contract. Her voice was clear, strong, and absolutely steady. Not the voice of someone who hadn't spoken in 3 years. The voice of someone who had been waiting for exactly the right moment. The room erupted. Khalil stood frozen, the pen dripping ink onto the contract. Hossein gasped. The Qadi's eyebrows shot up. Nadia actually shrieked. And Yusef's face went pale. You can speak, Khalil whispered. I can do more than speak, Amira said, stepping over the shattered glass. I can save you from your own pride and his betrayal. She pointed at Yusef. This is madness. Yusef sputtered. The woman has lost her mind. Khalil, ignore her and sign. But Amira was already moving. From her robes, she pulled a thick envelope. 3 weeks ago, my husband mentioned the Ibrahim trading family of Constantine. I had my sister make inquiries. Guess what? They don't exist. She tossed papers onto the table. Here are letters from 7 different merchant houses. No one has heard of them. This proves nothing. Yusef protested, but sweat was forming on his forehead. The contract you're about to sign doesn't create a partnership, Amira continued, her voice cutting through his protest. Page 7, Clause 3, written in the smallest script possible. It transfers complete ownership of all assets to Yusef. You wouldn't be a partner, Khalil. You'd be an employee in your own business. The Qadi grabbed the contract, flipping to page 7. His finger traced the lines. His expression darkened. She's correct. This class is deliberately deceptive. Let me explain, Yusuf started, but Amira wasn't finished. For 6 months, I've watched. I've listened. I've investigated. She pulled out her own notebook, filled with neat columns of figures. You mentioned owing money to Hossein. But Hossein never lent you anything, did you, Hossein? Hossein shook his head slowly, realization dawning. Not a single dirham. You said your warehouses were full. I sent Layla to check. They're empty. You claim to have partners in 3 cities. I wrote to contacts in all 3. No one knows you. Amira's voice was relentless now, each revelation landing like a hammer blow. You're drowning in gambling debts. The day's tax collectors are after you. You plan to take everything Khalil owns and disappear before anyone realized what happened. This is outrageous. Yusuf shouted, but he was backing toward the door. I don't have to listen to accusations from some woman who's been pretending to be mute. No, you don't, Amira agreed. But you will have to answer to the Qadi. And to this. She produced one final document. Your real ledgers. You left them here 3 weeks ago after drinking too much wine. I copied them. Khalil finally found his voice. Is this true? Yusuf, is any of this true? Yusuf looked at the faces surrounding him, shocked, disgusted, angry. He saw Hossein moving to block the door. He saw the Qadi's hand moving toward the summons bell he carried for cases requiring immediate authority. He broke. What was I supposed to do? Yusuf screamed, and suddenly he was crying, his careful facade crumbling. They were going to kill me. The gambling debts, they were going to kill my family. I had no choice. I needed. You needed to betray your brother. Hassan's voice was cold. To destroy a man who trusted you. The Qadi rang his bell. Yusuf Al-Fasi, you stand accused of fraud and conspiracy. You will come with me. He gestured, and 2 guards who'd been waiting outside entered. As they took Yusuf's arms, he looked at Khalil with something like regret. I'm sorry, brother. I truly am. But desperation makes monsters of us all. They dragged him out, Nadia wailing behind them. The other merchants made their excuses and left quickly, embarrassed to have nearly witnessed such a disaster. Hossein clasped Khalil's shoulder once wordlessly, then he too departed. Even the Qadi, after ensuring Khalil wouldn't sign anything, took his leave. Finally, Khalil and Amira were alone. The silence stretched between them, heavy with revelation and reckoning. Khalil looked at his wife, this woman he'd married for her quietness, her compliance, her supposed simplicity, and saw a stranger. Or perhaps he was seeing her clearly for the first time. How long, he asked. How long have you been able to speak? Always, Amira said quietly. I never lost my voice, Khalil. I chose silence. But why? Why deceive everyone? Why deceive me? She moved to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. When she spoke again, her voice carried weight of old pain. 3 years ago, I was engaged to a man named Tariq. He was a scholar, brilliant and kind. But more than that, he valued my mind. We would spend hours debating philosophy, discussing literature, arguing about everything and nothing. He made me feel like my thoughts mattered. She turned to face Khalil. Then he died. And when the mourning period ended, the suitors came. But they didn't want to debate with me. They wanted me to be quiet, decorative, obedient. So I made a vow. I would only speak again to a man who proved he could see beyond silence, who would value me for more than my compliance. And I failed that test, Khalil said bitterly. You failed it every day, Amira confirmed, then her honesty cut deeper than any blade. You didn't marry a woman, Khalil. You married an idea. You wanted peace, but what you really wanted was power. The power to make decisions without challenge, to be right without question, to have a wife who existed only to support your vision of yourself. Khalil sank into a chair, head in his hands. You saved me. You saved everything I have. And you did it while I dismissed you, ignored your warnings, treated you like you had nothing valuable to offer. Yes, Amira said simply. Can you forgive me? She was quiet for a long moment. That depends. Can you answer a question honestly? Anything. If I hadn't spoken today, if Yusef's trap had been less obvious, if I'd had to choose between staying silent and saving you, would you have wanted me to speak? Khalil opened his mouth, then closed it. He wanted to say yes immediately, but Amira deserved more than easy lies. He thought about the last 6 months, about his pride in his perfect wife, about how he'd boasted to Hassan. I don't know, he finally admitted. And that shame is going to live with me for a long time. Something shifted in Amira's expression, not quite forgiveness, but perhaps the foundation for it. At least that's honest. I want to change, Khalil said urgently. I want to be worthy of the woman who saved me. Can you teach me? Can you show me how to be the partner you deserve instead of the master I thought I wanted? Amira studied him, her intelligent eyes searching his face for sincerity. It won't be easy. I have years of opinions you haven't had. Years of thoughts you've dismissed without knowing they existed. Can you handle a wife who speaks her mind? I don't know, Khalil said again. But I'd like to try. Because the alternative is a life where I never know what you're thinking, where I make decisions in ignorance, where I treat you like a beautiful decoration, that's not marriage. That's imprisonment for us both. Slowly, carefully, Amira smiled. It was the first real smile Khalil had ever seen from her, and it transformed her face entirely. Then we'll start over. No more silence, but also no more assumptions. We'll build something new. She held out her hand. After a moment, Khalil took it. Thank you, he whispered. For saving me from Yusef, but also from myself. Don't thank me yet, Amira said, and there was gentle warning in her voice. You have years of listening to catch up on. I suggest you prepare yourself. And for the first time since his wedding day, Khalil laughed, really laughed, not from superiority but from genuine joy and relief and humility. 3 years later, the marketplace in Tunis buzzed with its usual chaos. Khalil walked through the spice stalls, but he wasn't alone. Beside him strode Amira, dressed in elegant business attire, her head uncovered now except for a light scarf, discussing profit margins with a trader from Morocco. The saffron price is too high, she was saying. We both know it. My husband and I can offer you better terms if you're willing to commit to quarterly orders instead of monthly. The trader looked at Khalil, who smiled and gestured to Amira. She handles our negotiations now. And I suggest you listen. She's never wrong. They walked on, Amira's voice confident as she explained her latest idea for expanding into Egyptian markets. Khalil listened, asked questions, offered his own thoughts. They debated amicably, neither dominating, both contributing. Hossein found them near the fountain, grinning widely. Brother. And sister. I have news, your last shipment to Constantine sold out in 3 days. The merchants are begging for more. Tell them we'll discuss terms, Amira said. But first, Khalil and I need to review the inventory together. After Hossein left, Khalil turned to his wife. Do you ever regret it? Speaking, I mean. Ending your test. Amira considered this. Sometimes I miss the power of silence. The way it made people underestimate me, gave me time to observe and think. But no, I don't regret it. Silence is a powerful tool, but it's a lonely one. I'd rather have a true partnership than perfect peace. Even when we argue. Khalil teased. Especially when we argue. That's how I know you're actually listening. They turned toward home, side by side, equal partners in business and life. The sun was setting over Tunis, painting the white buildings gold and amber. In the distance, the call to evening prayer began. You know, Khalil said thoughtfully, I used to think a quiet wife meant a perfect marriage. Now I think a perfect marriage is one where both people feel safe enough to be loud. Amira laughed, the sound free and unrestrained. It only took you almost losing everything to figure that out. Better late than never. Much better late than never. They walked on through the cooling evening, their voices mixing with the sounds of the city, two people who'd found each other through silence and saved each other through speech, building something neither could have created alone. But in the shadows of a distant alley, a figure watched them pass. Yusuf, thinner now, wearing the rough clothes of a man who'd lost everything, saw his former partner walking with his remarkable wife. The gambling debts had been paid through forced labor. The shame had cost him his marriage. The betrayal had cost him his name. He saw their happiness, their partnership, and felt the bitter taste of envy mixed with genuine remorse. He'd been released from his obligations yesterday. He was free now, but free to do what? He had nothing. He was nothing. As Khalil and Amira disappeared around a corner, still talking, still laughing, Yusuf made a decision. He pulled his one cloak tighter and headed toward the docks. There were ships leaving for distant ports, places where his name meant nothing, where he could start over. Or perhaps there was one more play to make. One more chance to reclaim what he'd lost. After all, he still knew Khalil's business better than anyone. He still knew the routes, the contacts, the opportunities. And now he knew about Amira's remarkable mind. Knowledge was power. And Yusuf had always been good at using power, even when it meant destroying the people who trusted him. He smiled in the darkness, a shadow moving through shadows, already planning his return. If you made it this far, drop a comment below. Did you see that ending coming? And don't forget to like and subscribe because this channel has more incredible African folktales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. What happens when Yusuf returns? Will Khalil and Amira's partnership survive a second test? The story continues, but only if you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't miss what happens next.